Hello, Internet. Welcome to episode 384 of the Assorted podcast. The Sacramento podcast is a little bit for everyone. I'm Weer'd, and tonight I am joined by the greatest hostess in the entire universe, Aaron Paulette. How you doing, Aaron?
Only the universe? I thought it was the multiverse.
Didn't I already say that?
Does this universe make my butt look big? This is the part where you say you'd like to talk to your lawyer.
Hold on, I need to check to see what universe this is.
I am sorely peopled out right now because I basically lost the entire afternoon helping my mom with her taxes. And look, I'm not a numbers person, so no, it's not like she and I were doing the paperwork ourselves. She had a tax preparer that she's been using for like at least 20 years, but he had the nerve to retire last year. How dare he? And so we had to find someone else to do it for us. And as it turns out, and I don't know if this is, well, I guess it is kind of gated by age because it's done by AARP. Although I saw a very young person there, so who knows. But they will do your tax preparation for free. You just have to make an appointment, and that's what we did. And so we gathered up all the tax documents from last year, and we brought them in, and we talked to a very nice man. Now, as I've said before, I've now been diagnosed with inattentive ADHD. I don't normally fidget a whole lot, but for whatever reason, and I don't know why, I had such a case of the fidgets, and, you know, I wanted to come along both to help my mother and also because in case she ends up in a nursing home, you know, I'll have to take over and do this for her. And so, all right, you know, I want to know everything that's going on, but my brain is like so bored, you know, and wants to walk around and play on the phone. It's like, no, gotta stay focused. And so that burned through a lot of willpower. Although I will say that I did help my mom in a few ways. One was by finding something online, because we've got online banking, but my mom refuses to use a cell phone. So I went online and I found it and I showed it to the guy, and so that saved us like a trip back. And then I'm not going to get into the specifics, but basically, I helped my mom get enough of a deduction that she's getting a refund. So that's good. It's better than her having to pay the IRS quarterly. So it was a pretty significant refund. So, I mean, it was good that we went, but it ate the entire afternoon, and I was just so squirmy and peopled out. It was just, you know, get home, have about like 45 minutes to try and make something there for the afternoon, and then it's walk Tilly, and then get ready for the podcast, and it was just, I felt very pressured, but, you know, I'm here now, I'm feeling a bit better, and so I'm ready to do the podcast, Weer'd. Oh, yes, one more thing, and I'm very glad that I left this note for myself. So to our dear listeners, my birthday is on March 11th, so even if you're not if you are a subscriber, if you aren't a subscriber, it'll be the Wednesday after you hear this. And so, I would just like people to wish me a happy birthday. And also, I'm really curious how many people who listen to our podcast actually interact with us. So if you would, you know, say, you know, happy birthday, Aaron, you know, it doesn't really matter where you can send me a PM. You can tag me, you can post on my wall, but just let me know that it's because I asked you to on the podcast, and that'll give me an interesting data set. Thanks. So that's all I'm asking. Just wish me a happy one. And how are you doing, Weer'd?
I am doing much better. So the night that we recorded last week's episode, I went up to bed and I was just freezing, which is not uncommon because it's 10 degrees outside, and so therefore the furnace is running constantly. We have a cold air makeup down here, so there's cold air being pumped into my office from outside, so there's fresh air for the boiler to burn away, and all that. And so I go upstairs and I climb into bed, and I wake up an hour later and I'm still freezing, and I'm like, oh, this isn't a good sign. I go and put socks on, something I never do, and that helps a little bit. Eventually wake up the next morning, I'm still freezing, and my nose is stuffed up even more, and I'm like, oh, I'm sick. And so I was only sick for 24 hours, but it was just one of those things of okay, now I feel a little bit better. I'm going to go run out and do some errands, get back for the errands. Now I'm exhausted. I need to lay down. So, but the really good news of this is one of the errands I was running out was fixing a door. It's got a little ball detent. It's a closet door with a ball detent, and the ball detent completely got ruined. And so when I was trying to fix that, I grabbed a little step ladder, and as I was putting the step ladder back, I went, "What is this?" and looked back and realized that something's stuck on one of the mouse traps back there, and it was in fact a mouse. And so got the mouse out, disposed of it. And I have not seen any sign of mouse activity in my house at all. I'll be very excited to feel if my breathing is better, but I've got a cold, so my breathing's not great, but that's pretty normal. So we will see.
I would like our listeners to take a moment of silence in respectful memoriam of Larry the Mouse.
Yes. It's really become a major thing, the number of people that are sending me mouse-related memes. Yes, there's mice in the house. Yes, I want to murder them. And so we will see. I definitely is one of those I definitely thought that there was another one for sure, but we'll take none. I did say to my wife that when we were chasing that one around that I told about, in fact, we might have killed them doing that because they are skittish little prey species rodents. So a really, really vigorous workout and a lot of fear can kill them. So yeah, I don't know there, but so far so good. It was nice. I made breakfast the other day. I pulled out my cast iron skillet and it was not filled with mouse poop. That's always a delight. So yeah,
extra protein.
Yeah. God, Aaron, go lay down. But yes, yeah, and it still continues to be snowing constantly. Luckily on that the Wednesday when I was just really laid out sick, it just started snowing, and I'm looking out the window going, oh God, I do not want to go outside and shovel. I said, I'm just going to wait and see what it does. And thankfully, at one point in time, I might even lay down for a nap. And when I got up, I looked out, the sun was up and most of the snow had melted. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. But yeah, that was my week. It was mostly kind of a lost week. But we are down a mouse and maybe down all the mice. Because again, no sign of them. Good riddance. All right. Now on to the topics. Don't have a ton this week, but it's unlike last week. They are mostly good stories, and so this first one here is from Cam Edwards at Bearing Arms. Tea leaves from SCOTUS Arguments in Guns and Drug Case, and this is the Hamani case, and they are just as of this morning they have started the oral arguments.
Okay, so just as a recap for our listeners, the point of the Hamani case is it is challenging the law that if you are a drug user, you are prohibited from owning firearms lawfully. Mm-hmm. And Hamani he did a lot of things, and he's basically a scoundrel. And there were all sorts of drug charges, and I think there's suspicion that he was working with Iran for like espionage or terrorism or something like that. But the point being is that he is a user of marijuana, and he owns firearms. And so they were challenging this under Bruin. Okay, Weer'd, you may proceed now.
Yeah, and there's just a bunch of interesting distinctions. Again, it'll be interesting. We're at the speculative point. They haven't made a ruling yet, but let's see. But yeah, I think it was. This isn't citing too well, but noting like asked whether Hamani would even qualify as a habitual user. It cites the Americans' temperance movement said 8 shots of whiskey a day wasn't enough. And and there is one good Neil Gorsuch. I think pointing out that the founders knew how to party and drank a lot, which is an understatement. Especially, I've read some like old colonial era Navy logs, and just people just getting straight up loaded. And so we don't have things on, intoxicating liquor. We have issues on people who are drunk. If you showed up for a militia muster while drunk, there might be some issues, but just being someone who is a habitual user of alcohol. And of course they had opium back then as well. And oddly enough, none of this is mentioned. So, there was another really, good one. There's a bit on, evidently, Sotomayor refers to something as takes a stick of marijuana. And whoever's tweeting for the Second Amendment Foundation says, confirmed Sotomayor's parents did an excellent job making sure their daughter never dabbled in any drug use. It was just adorable.
I'm almost positive that's our friend Costas Moros.
I would guess. I would guess, but yes, a stick of marijuana. Let's see. It was one of the last ones on the page as I'm scrolling down. But essentially arguing the fact that if somebody is a habitual user of marijuana, will we take away their driver's license? And of course, the statement was no. So long as you could be an absolute alcoholic and have your driver's license, so long as you are only driving when you're sober. But they will take away your constitutional rights. And that was, I think, a very, very telling statement on the privilege to drive a car will not get suspended if you are a habitual user of illegal drugs. Again, so long as you're not caught drunk driving. But in this case, but being a habitual user of illegal drugs will remove your right to keep and bear arms. And so I was, as you said, he is a scoundrel. He's got a lot of moral checks. It shouldn't make a difference, but it does, unfortunately. And so, but it was very interesting to hear these sort of things. We will see where it goes from here.
Well, just to put a bow on this, because this was titled Reading the Tea Leaves, Costas Moros and Amy Swearer and now Cam Edwards, they're believing that this is going to be a divided decision, but it will rule in Hamani's favor. But what's interesting is who is going to vote yes, because it seemed very clear from reading these tweets that Alito is not the gun owner's friend in this particular case, and that there are some liberal judges who are likely to rule yes on this. There's at least one prediction that Judge Brown will rule yes on this, basically as a way to repudiate Bruin or Rahimi or whatever. So what I'm getting at is the people who vote yes will do so for divided reasons. And so some will do it for constitutionality, others will do it to get back at a ruling they don't like. Honestly, I will take the win, but I would caution people not to view this as, oh, everything is awesome. The Supreme Court is ruling in our favor. No, this is going to be partisan. And so the people who agree with the ruling are going to be doing so for greatly different reasons.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. And again, something that I'm always hoping is to see a little bit of a breakout of the partisan nature of the Second Amendment, or in this case, I mean, maybe they're going to change different things. Maybe it's going to be, the more liberal judges are going to rule in favor of or rule against drug restrictions or something like that. And you know what? Any port in the storm.
Mm-hmm.
So this next one is another. It's not a Supreme Court case. It's just a. Let's see. It's a Supreme Judicial Court of Massachusetts, and it is a person who was caught without a license to carry under 21. I thought I read somewhere here that they also had drugs, but this case is going to be a very, very interesting one because obviously the challenge is the fact that if you are under the age of 21, and I'm trying to remember if the new law that was enacted made the FIDs inaccessible for 18-year-olds. But it used to be that we had the FID, which was just a long gun permit, essentially the hunting permit. You could get from 18 to 20. And then once you turned 21, then you were eligible for the LTC, which stands for license to carry, but it is an owner's permit. And so until you have that permit, you cannot buy a gun or ammunition. And so the interesting thing about this is not only is it challenging the restriction on the permit, it could be interesting to see if it's probably wishful thinking, but going on the unconstitutionality of the fact that I need to own a permit just to legally possess guns. I mean, that's clearly unconstitutional. It's, on the same grounds as a poll tax.
So I want to cite something from this article, and it is a soapbox topic for me. And so it says here, the Suffolk District Attorney's Office is arguing age restrictions are constitutional and necessary. They cite how the brains of young people aren't fully developed, and that federal and state laws on all manner of subjects routinely have age restrictions. So, what they are saying is that even though at age 18 you are considered an adult in the eyes of the law, and you can join the military, where you would be handling guns, and potentially, dying for your country. You can enter into binding legal contracts. You can marry. You could theoretically adopt a child.
Let me add a real one that affects a lot of people is you can sign up for student loans and declare a major.
Mm-hmm. But even though you can do all this, your brain isn't fully developed, so you don't get your Second Amendment rights until you reach the other arbitrary age of 21. And, I mean, I'm not going to rehash the whole argument, but it seems to me that if you're an adult, you get all of the adult rights with all of the adult responsibilities. And so we as a nation need to decide if the real age of adulthood is 18 or 21. At this point, I don't really care which one it is, but pick one and we stick with it. None of this, well, you're kind of an adult at 18, but not really until you reach 21. It's BS. It's absolute garbage.
Yep. No, I 100% agree with that statement. Again, it's one of those, you can't dare hold the responsibility of owning a firearm, or, now it's smoking a cigarette. When I turned 18, I bought a cigar, and but I could not buy alcohol until I turned 21. Obviously, now 21 is, I believe that's the federal age now for tobacco products. But it's one of those. Oh, you're not responsible enough to smoke and drink. But again, yeah, you can enter. You can sign up for non-dischargeable student loan debts, and declare a major at a school that may not ever pay off those debts. And then of course also there's you can vote. How can you trust these people who are so irresponsible that they can't own a firearm to make an informed decision on who's going to be the government leaders? So yeah, it's the fact that the same people that are, I mean, honestly speaking, there's been several people in Massachusetts who have been trying to lower the voting age down to 16, and so it clearly shows that this is their line, but they don't believe it.
Yeah, all I want is consistency. Just pick one and go with it. But I will tell you that the United States military is going to fight tooth and nail to keep the age of majority at 18 because of recruitment. Because they need young, fit, aggressive, and sometimes foolish young men to enlist. I mean, I'm not saying that anyone who joins the military is stupid because I come from a military family, but I do know that there were a lot of young men who joined because it was the manly thing to do or because they thought it would be cool, and they regretted it. And I do think that if the age of enlistment is raised to 21, they might change their mind. And the military doesn't want people to change their mind. They want to be fully staffed. And so, would I be happy with the age of everything being dropped to 18? Absolutely. Yep.
No, that's where I stand as well. Might as well just drop it down to 18, and because I also think that there's something to be said about this, like, oh, you're not quite an adult yet. There's people in their 20s who don't really consider themselves an adult. I like to watch body cam footage, and like the number of people that are, grown ass adults that are like, can I call my mom? And it's just one of those like, what are you doing? You're an adult. You can make all these decisions for yourself. And now moving on to the last one. This is not as happy news, but I just found it to be a very, very interesting story, which is that violent attacks are up on the Chicago Transit Authority trains. Though the key factor that I was seeing is that though property crime is down, and so they were saying that the overall crime was lower, but it's because there's less property crime but more assaults. And this ties in with, even though you can conceal carry in the city of Chicago now, thanks to all the wonderful Supreme Court decisions, they are very much like many parts of the gun-friendly parts of the world, where there are heavy restrictions on where people can carry and where you can go with that gun. And one of the ones is you are not allowed to use public transit, which is shameful because, I mean, so many people that live in major cities like don't even own cars because why bother? They're expensive. Parking them is expensive, and public transit can get you almost anywhere.
And honestly, if you're going to need a self-defense weapon, it'll likely be on public transit.
I mean, it's kind of a catch-22 is, as a general rule, you're going to need it on public transit because, it's an enclosed area and that sort of stuff. And you might be, running late at night and it's underground, etc. Though they've got the elevated trains there. But also because it's a gun-free zone, that's why you need it. It's oddly enough, criminals know. It only takes a couple of them getting shot before they realize maybe that's not the greatest idea. So yeah, there's another, hey, look, gun control isn't saving lives. because that's the whole argument. Why can't you have the guns on the subway? Well, it's a sensitive place. If we had people bringing guns on subways, people might get hurt. Well, people are getting hurt. People
are getting set on fire.
Yes. Yep. And or in the case of of course, the very, very famous case in the Charlotte light rail, that also is posted no firearms. Still, I remember I rode on that light rail when it was back in 2010 when the NRA convention was down there, and that was the first thing I saw. Hopped on that light rail and said no firearms. Oh, that's great.
Mm. Well, I mean, just to circle back, when I took my mother to get the tax prepared, it was done in an empty room in City Hall. And City Hall is posted no weapons, and all the bags and everything are subject to search. Were there metal detectors at the doors? No. Were there any armed guards, be it police, sheriff's deputies, private security? No, not at all. So I have the somewhat radical belief that if you're going to forbid people from carrying on your property under penalty of law, then you assume the moral and legal responsibility for their safety. And so, if someone had decided, okay, I didn't carry that today, but if I decide to carry for my own safety because they aren't going to be protecting me and they find something, I'm going to jail. But if a disgruntled whoever decides to shoot the place up, gosh, they have no duty to protect me. And really, a theme that I keep returning to here is I hate double standards. Mm-hmm. Just pick one and live with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's, it's one thing, there was, a few years ago, my wife and I were traveling to Bermuda, and we went to go dig up our passports and could not find them. I don't even know. I think mine showed up eventually, but my wife never did figure out where her passport escaped off to. So because it was close to the trip, we ended up going into the federal building in Boston to go through there. And of course, it's a federal building, so it is no guns. But I mean, was literally armed guards and airport style, metal detectors. You had to put your bags through the conveyor belt and all that. And there's dudes with guns all around. Same thing with the airport. The airport has armed guards and security systems and things like that. Perfect. Supply some security. But the post office, town hall, the whatever, whatever you want to, name your gun-free zone, the subway, it does not have any security whatsoever, above your average street. And I mean, I think one of the things, it's tough when it's actual city rules, but I think you can get a lot of change is if somebody is harmed in workplace violence at a place of employment where the employee handbook says that it is against the rules for employees to carry weapons. I think a lawsuit against them for not supplying adequate security while removing your ability to supply your own security will change a lot of that, because the whole reason why most companies have that line in there, it's just boilerplate that some lawyer somewhere decided that, that's a legal liability to allow your employees to carry weapons. So just say, look, if we catch you carrying a weapon, doesn't matter if you've got a permit, doesn't matter what, that's grounds for termination.
Yeah, it's not for employee safety, it's for corporate liability.
Correct. I assume that they're worried that you may shoot at a robber just as a theoretical. You shoot at a robber, miss the robber, and hit somebody at the convenience store that's shopping, and that person gets harmed, and so they sue the company because there was a gunfight that went on in the store, and they'll go, oh well, the if the employee was allowed to carry a gun, well, I guess it kind of is our fault. If the employee was not allowed to carry the gun and we fire them, it's not our fault. But it's one of those, well, what if the employee is harmed while working for your company and they have a gun and they have a carry permit and they carry a gun, but they took the gun off to come to work because they didn't want to get fired and then they got harmed. Yep. Double standards are problems. And just makes sense. Week I talked to Casey Harrington of Koa Athletics about her products, and she mentioned some specific things about their materials. Let's hear more about that. I am pleased to welcome back to the Assorted Calibers podcast, Casey Harrington of Koa Athletics. How you doing, Casey?
I'm good. How are you?
I am great. And so in our last interview, you talked a bunch about materials and chemicals. And honestly speaking, I'm a biologist, not a chemist. So I heard all of those buzzwords and statements and talking about being made in America. So can you tell me about just where the rubber hits the road on Koa Athletics, about the materials that you use in your products?
Yeah. So, I'm someone who always lived in athletic gear, and, we all know since 2020, a lot of things have been coming out about a whole bunch of stuff: food, medicine, clothes, and we're hearing a lot about chemicals in our clothing. And especially like the big one is Lululemon. Lululemon has, forever chemicals. And if you don't know what that is, it's basically it's a chemical that you put on clothing to help with stain resistance and fire, or flammability resistance and, just the overall softness of the fabric. And so, but that's a forever chemical, and they call it that because it lasts forever in the environment and in your body. And your skin is the biggest organ on your body. So you're absorbing that while you sweat, while you wear it. And it's not a good combination because it doesn't leave your body.
As a marine biologist, I've got to interrupt with just a great thing is you'll often hear talking about like, limit your consumption of, say, bluefin tuna and swordfish, which are two major food fishes that are common. And the reason is because they are great big apex predator fish. And so you'll have the plankton swimming around in the water. And if they ingest some mercury compounds from, say, improperly disposed of fluorescent light bulbs or industrial chemicals or all of that mercury is a heavy metal. It's not going to react with anything. It's going to stick in their body. It's going to stay there. There's no way for them to get rid of it. And then the smaller fish will eat that. The bigger fish will eat that. And it's called bioaccumulating. You develop more and more and more of it. And so the apex predators, they're eating things that have been eating hundreds of creatures downstream from them. These forever chemicals. The same thing goes with why we work so hard in the firearms industry to limit lead exposure, because once that gets into your body, it really doesn't go away. And really the best solution for lead exposure is to make sure you eat plenty of calcium, and your body encapsulates it in your bones. So it doesn't go away, but it also can't, get into other parts of your body and cause further harm.
Yeah, I actually have. So I did some lead testing with my husband. We went to a range and tested before and after values to see like where were the highest concentrations of lead after shooting a typical range day. And I have that. I have a PDF all about it. I need to finalize some of the details on it first. And then, so it has, the results, but also how do you manage this? What kind of soaps you use? Because not all soaps are the same. Do you want to use hot or cold water when you take a shower? What about your clothes and your shoes and all of that? So I have a guide coming out on that very shortly.
Oh, that's awesome. Will that be on the blog on Koa Athletics?
Yeah, it'll be, I'm going to rearrange some stuff on my website, but it'll be under the free guides section to be able to download for free. So
that's awesome. There'll be links in the show notes, and keep an eye over there. So, all right. So we talked about, forever chemicals. So first up, how do you make sure that you've got stuff that doesn't have that? And are there any downsides to the fabric? So do these things get stained easier and get damaged easier?
Not necessarily. So the the certification, you have to source fabrics based on the certification. So the fabrics that I source are certified against these chemicals. I don't certify the leggings themselves because you have to go through a whole process to make sure the manufacturer is certified, and like every single piece and part of the legging is certified. But if the biggest, if like the 99 or 98% of the leggings is fabric and the fabric is certified, then I'm okay with that. But so the fabrics is either going to be a GOTS certification, which is for your organic cotton, or you have a OECOTEX certification, which is for anything that's not cotton, basically. And those are just certified against hundreds of harmful chemicals that you can find in clothing. Especially the biggest one is the forever chemicals. And then there's a bunch of carcinogens in dyes. So it's not necessarily the fabrics that's always toxic. It's the dyes that are used to dye the fabrics. So the dyes that are used are also, they have certifications, especially the cotton ones, because the cotton ones will be certified undyed. And then you have to make sure that the dye they use is also certified against that. So, so there's a dye house in California that uses glucine dyes, and those are, environmentally clean, certified against harmful chemicals.
All right, that's awesome. And that also probably means that the actual manufacturing process is also better for the overall environment as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And then, I make sure that my manufacturer's from the United States, so there, there's more regulations, less shenanigans going on that you might not be aware of, and you can always check on them. Unfortunately, my manufacturer did move overseas, and so I'm in the process of finding a new one. But I have high hopes for 2 that I found in Texas, so that'll be nice. But as far as the quality of the fabrics, the quality is going to it's going to come from how the fabric is made and, the type of materials of the fabrics. Anything that's cotton is going to wear out faster. That's just how it is. Doesn't matter if you put a finish on it or not. It's just the type of material. I mean, you wear through shirts. Those are mostly cotton, not leggings, sweatpants. I have holes in a bunch of my sweatpants that are cotton. So cotton's just going to wear out more frequently. And then my other pair of leggings, it is a nylon blend. It's responsibly made so that basically there's a lot of wastewater, that is produced when making a lot of these plastic type fabrics, especially polyester. With the brand that I use, it's all recycled. So they recycle all their water, they catch all the waste, and it's reused so that it's a closed loop system. So it's not damaging the environment, and they do it in a responsible way. So yeah.
Oh, that is great. And so you're not running the manufacturing yourself, correct?
Oh no, I tried to sew a T-shirt and it didn't turn out very well.
So tell me, how are you sourcing your fabrics? How are you sourcing your manufacturing?
Yeah, so as far as manufacturing goes, the first time around I interviewed, so I went with a manufacturer in Texas and they ended up being quite awful. We were like 7 samples in and they kept messing up, and it was like a 2-year process. So like, I give up. I need to find someone else. And then, but there's a very specific type of sewing machine that I need for the type of stitch that I want. Which is just a newer stitch. It's a more secure stitch. It's better. It holds up better, but not many manufacturers have that here in the US yet. And I was searching and I was like, I might have to go to India or something. Like, I refuse to go to China, but I might have to go somewhere else. And within a week, I found a manufacturer. I was like, oh my goodness, I cannot believe it. And it was from a company that I already wear. And so I knew, like, the clothes that I wear, I was like, I really like their clothes, so the manufacturer must be really good. And they were amazing. They had one sample. The sample was perfect. I didn't need to make any changes. And I went with them, and then now they left. So I have to do the process again. But there are more manufacturers now since I've looked the first time. So I'm hopeful I can find something good.
Well, that is great to hear. And so you're also sourcing your textile materials, your raw textiles from...
Yes. So yeah, so there's there's a company in California that makes all their own textiles and dyes all their own textiles. So that's the cotton one that I have. And I'm trying to get a thicker fabric from them so that it's a little less. It's got a little more compression. They're still really nice, but they're more like lounge, run errands, go for a run, go for a walk kind of thing. I do CrossFit in them, but I would rather wear the other fabric that I have when I work out and stuff like that. So I'm hoping to get a thicker organic cotton version from them. If I can't, I'm seeing if I can find like an undyed version made. Canada makes quite a few textiles too. So that's where the nylon blend comes from. It comes from Canada. So I'm really, honestly, I'm just trying to avoid China overall. India makes a lot of great cotton. They're a huge organic cotton sources over there. So that's why you see a lot of organic cotton companies make their items in India and also source most of their fabrics from India. So the fabric sourcing, while I would love to have it be 100% American, it's not always. But as long as I'm not, because I just don't trust what the label says from China. I just don't. So I'll source elsewhere.
Yeah, I think all you need to do without getting too deep into geopolitics,
right?
There was a massive scare on us, like I think it was both pet food and at the same time pet food and baby toys that were contaminated with forever chemicals and all that. And that's the last thing you want is your small child chewing on a toy made in China that's made with toxic chemicals. Well,
and yeah, I've come across that a lot. So I have 3 kids and a 4th on the way. And I was, researching like different toys and stuff like that. And there's a couple of Instagram pages that I come across that will test different items, brand new items from, bookshelves, furniture, toys, and baby bottles, and they have lead on them. And and they're all made in China. And lead is banned, but that doesn't, some of these things don't get tested or reviewed before coming into our country. So, I just avoid it.
Yeah, that's a major issue. I mean, something that the people in the firearms industry can also see is there are some cheaper gun brands, and people will turn their nose up at some of those gun brands. I'll save from throwing shade at some of them. Some of them are very recently out of business, I'll just say. And it's not that they're making a bad product. It's not that we're, jingoistic or xenophobic about, you can't get a gun from a foreign country, but it's they just don't put that level of testing into the product and quality control into the product so that it comes out as perfect as the primary design.
Right. Yeah. Like I can order what I think I order, but I might not always get what I order. Yeah.
And also, we're throwing some shade at China, though India's also got some issues as well with, all of the countries that are of a lower economic status will often have far less environmental protections going on. So it's also, super important is, you don't want them, everything produces some level of waste chemicals. You want the people to minimize what they're doing and being responsible with how they dispose of the stuff that they don't use at the end.
Yeah, it's not just about a product; it's how it's made. Yep.
Yeah, so that's awesome. I mean, not only are they a great set of leggings for someone to safely and effectively conceal carry a firearm, they're also something that you can feel good about with how it's made and how it's going to interact with your body.
Yeah.
So thank you so much, Casey, for joining us, and the links to Koa Athletics will be in the show notes.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
So, Forever Chemicals has now been added to my list of anxiety alongside microplastics.
Well, I will say, Aaron, I am not that concerned about microplastics. The whole reason why people freak out about microplastics is the fact that plastics do not readily biodegrade. They do, but not readily. And so the idea of you have a plastic bottle that gets thrown in the ocean, well, it's going to get weathered and handled and dealt with until it is very, very, very tiny pieces. It's been sandblasted down to nothing, but those little tiny pieces of plastic aren't going to break down any further, like, say, a piece of wood or a rock or concrete or metal. And so the idea is that it's going to be lots and lots and lots of this stuff. But the nature of it, because it's not going anywhere, it's inert. So if you are using a plastic cutting board, of which I love plastic cutting boards because I throw them in my dishwasher, there's going to be some plastics that are chipped off of the cutting board while I am cutting vegetables, and I will ingest some of those, and it's just not going to do anything. It's inert. So I am not concerned about microplastics. I am concerned about chemicals like BPE. I don't even remember what that stands for, but toxic chemicals that certain plastics leach out. So therefore I make sure that the plastics that I use for water bottles and for cutting boards and storage things and all that are not going to leach chemicals in. But as a general rule, it's reactive chemicals that is the stuff that you've got to worry about.
Well, I thought I could find out what BPE stands for, and I'm not having a lot of success.
Oh, it's BPA.
Oh, well, gosh, that would probably do it. Yeah.
Yep. I
Bisphenol.
Okay. Yes.
All right. So, in your almost a doctor opinion, we don't need to worry about microplastics, but we do need to worry about forever chemicals.
Yes.
Okay.
That's as good a takeaway as any, and that's I'm glad Casey's caring about such things because that's especially clothes. That's stuff that you put on your body. The stuff that you put inside your body that you eat is one thing, but also things that you're wearing on you is also. My daughter luckily has kind of drifted away from it, but she went through a big makeup and skincare plan and was really dabbling in a lot of stuff and trying a lot of different things. And not only do you have to worry about you don't want to put stuff that's meant for older people that reduces wrinkles and things like that when you are young and your skin is fine and supple and good. And some of these treatments that are harsher may actually ruin your young skin, but also certain chemicals that might have some bioaccumulative capacity. There are websites you can go to look up which cosmetics are safe and advisable for children if you are in the same boat as I am. And luckily, I can't cite them off the top of my head because we've kind of gotten out of there. She's settled on a few things that we've already approved as safe, and that's all we have to deal with.
And now, David tells us why Israeli carry isn't really kosher.
Hi, and welcome to Gun Lovers and Other Strangers. With the Mideast being in the news so much lately, Weer'd asked me to discuss an interesting historical aspect of Israeli small arms usage and training. So in this segment, I'm going to talk about Condition 3, or Israeli carry. But first, some history. The early Israeli Defense Force, and before them the Haganah, used a broad variety of handguns, pretty much whatever they could acquire at the time. In the early days, often by less than legal means. Some of the semi-automatic pistols they used included the Luger P08, Walther P38, Mauser C96 broom handle, various Czech handguns including the VZ27, the Radom Viz 35, Colt 1911, Colt Pocket Hammerless, various Browning and FN pistols, the Beretta M1951, which was the first standard-issue IDF handgun, and the Browning High Power, which replaced the M1951 as they wore out. This list does not include the many types of revolvers carried and used by Jewish and Israeli law enforcement and military personnel from the 1920s through the 1960s. In various segments, roundtables, and mag dumps, we've talked about the problems with empty chamber carry, also called Condition 3. What many listeners may not be aware of is that this is also commonly referred to as Israeli carry in the firearms training world. Standard operating procedure for handgun carry in the Haganah and later the IDF was with a loaded magazine inserted but the chamber left empty. There are several reasons why they may have developed and applied this standard operating procedure. Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up. With such a wide variety of handguns, many of them in poor condition from years of hard military service in World War I and later acquisitions in World War II, the safeties were not only in different locations on the guns, but couldn't be counted on to work reliably. In addition to the purely mechanical issues, mandatory military service with a minimum duration in uniform of only 2 to 3 years didn't leave much time for drilling with sidearms. So to simplify training and reduce the chances of negligent discharges, Condition 3, also called empty chamber carry, became the standard. Soldiers whose duties required them to carry handguns were trained to draw and rack the side in a single continuous motion. While still slower than Condition 1, full magazine, round chambered, safety on, it was considered a reasonable trade-off to reduce the likelihood of soldiers inadvertently injuring themselves or others. From what I've been able to find, the IDF generally still trains for Condition 3 carry. However, common soldiers are often authorized to carry Condition 1 if combat is imminent, and Special Forces troops regularly carry with a round in the chamber most of the time. As I said earlier, an interesting historical aspect of Israeli small arms usage and training. So what does this have to do with private citizens carrying handguns for self-defense? Not really much of anything at all. We should not be depending on worn or mechanically unreliable pistols for our protection. There are plenty of modern, well-designed, and properly made handguns on the market for reasonable prices. We can get as much training as we can afford, and we can practice regularly. Running even 100 rounds or so through a carry gun every month isn't out of reach for most people. There are very few reasons for us to carry chamber empty. It's an additional liability and can cause more problems than it solves. For example, if we are called on to deploy our sidearm, we won't know if we'll have both hands free. The extra time it takes to rack a round into the chamber will put us at an even greater disadvantage than is normally the case in these types of incidents. Remember, we'll rarely know things are about to kick off until it actually happens. Even an extra half second of delay can be the difference between leaving the incident in a car or a coroner's wagon. It's fairly common for many new shooters to have confidence issues with the thought of carrying a deadly weapon ready to go in an instant. However, just like being willing to use a gun to defend ourselves or others, we need to make sure we have sufficient self-assurance in our tools and our skills to utilize them properly and safely. That's why training and practice are so important. Dry fire practice and training tools like the Mantis Titan X are some of the many options for both improving skills and confidence. I strongly urge our listeners to make use of as many of these opportunities for self-improvement as possible. Keep training and carry safely.
To carry with a loaded chamber or not to chamber, that is the question. Whether it is nobler to endure the slings and arrows of bearded loudmouths or to risk a negligent discharge.
That about wraps up this segment. If you have any questions for me or suggestions for future segments or a comment on a past segment, please post them on the Assorted Calibers Podcast Facebook or MeWe pages, and Aaron or Weer'd will make sure I see them. I'm also a contributor on the Blue Collar Prepping blog, which can be found at bluecollarprepping.blogspot.com. Finally, I'm a published author, and books with my stories can be found on Amazon under the names Brena Bock and David Bock. That's all for now. Thanks for listening. I'm David, and this is Gun Lovers and Other Strangers.
One thing is, besides the loss of draw time on racking it in, it's also possible that you can have an issue when chambering around and you can induce a malfunction. So a gun that would otherwise be working, congratulations. Now you've got the dreaded 3-point jam and you haven't even fired a shot. Also, this kind of ties into, it's kind of a formative thing that happened to me was how far back it was. The guy was looking at a Springfield XD. I know they still make them, but you don't see as much interest in them anymore. But he was specifically interested in the XD over the Glock because the XD had a thumb safety. And I let him know that there's no safety feature at all that is going to prevent harm from a live firearm. So carrying it without a round in the chamber you could still hurt yourself. Could be that while you're trying to rack that round in a chamber, you may have yourself a negligent discharge. It's all guns are dangerous. His gun is not safe. So the solution is just better safety training. Don't work with gimmicks or tricks to try to make things safer.
So when my father carried concealed, he carried a revolver, and because it was one of these compact revolvers, it only had 5 shots in the cylinder. And for whatever reason, maybe because he had outdated information or just, grew up on Westerns, he was convinced that if you carried a revolver with a round under the hammer, even with the hammer down, you could still have a negligent discharge. And so he carried with an empty... Is it still considered an empty chamber in the cylinder?
Yep. Empty
Okay.
chamber.
So he's now got a concealed carry pistol with 4 shots. I mean, I didn't think it was a good idea. I'm glad that he never needed to defend himself. Oh, by the way, no, of course he didn't carry a speed loader. Why would he? So that's probably one reason why I look down on revolvers. It's like, really? So you're already taking a slow firing weapon with, not a lot of ammunition and slow to reload, and then you're handicapping it further, and then you're not carrying spare reloads. Just So
as far as I know, he was definitely dealing with outdated information.
Yeah, I mean, this sounds like something that happened like during, cowboy days, but not in the days of like modern drop safeties.
Yes. So yeah, there was a story, it may or may not have been true, that Wyatt Earp himself was leaning back on a bar stool, and his peacemaker fell out of his holster and landed on the ground. The hammer struck the floor. There was and he had loaded all 6 chambers with live rounds, and the round came up and went through the brim of his hat. May not have happened because a lot of these really cool Old West stories didn't happen. But that is something that could very, very easily happen. And so it was generally considered the smart thing to do is to load 5 rounds and then make sure that the hammer is down on the empty chamber. But as far as modern semi-auto revolvers go, I mean, unless your dad was carrying double action revolvers, I said semi-auto revolvers, but as far as, double action revolvers go, unless your dad had a really, really old one or a really shoddily made one, they pretty much all had one form or another of, drop safety, hammer bump safety, it's not going to go off. But I mean, I had an honest to God gunsmith say, oh yeah, showed me a Smith & Wesson revolver that had the firing pin on the hammer, and says, yep, it's got the firing pin right there on the hammer. So you got to carry on an empty chamber. And I went, no, wait a second. No. And the best way to tell it is you could take like Smith & Wesson revolvers, the fun one is this was an empty gun, of course, but pull the trigger and either lower the hammer, you can dry fire it too, but essentially put the hammer down into the fully down position with your fingers still on the trigger, and then look at the hammer and release the trigger, and you'll see the hammer bounce back a little bit because Smith & Wesson has what's called a hammer block safety, and so the hammer cannot, or the firing pin or the hammer cannot contact either the firing pin or the firing pin contact the primer, depending on if it's a gun that has the firing pin on the hammer or not, unless the trigger is pulled completely to the rearward position. Colts and Rugers have a transfer bar, so there's a little paddle that comes up and allows the hammer to make full contact. So yeah, no, you can absolutely carry those fully loaded.
So what if the hammer spring malfunctions?
then the gun doesn't work because the proper name for it is the mainspring. And so that is the most important spring in the gun. And without that spring, your gun ain't gunning.
Oh, you didn't react the way I wanted you to. So the revolvers my father carried, they were made in the 21st century, and they were from Smith & Wesson.
Yeah.
But he was just convinced that he needed to carry on an empty chamber, and I didn't bother to change his mind.
Yeah, well, like I said, I have seen people who are I mean, like I said, the guy that said that to me was a literal gunsmith. He had taken that gun apart to work on it. So he actually had taken out the part that specifically keeps the hammer from doing the from hitting the firing pin, or this case, it was the hammer from hitting the primer when the trigger is in the forward position. Like it just didn't occur to him because, again, old West guns. At Hickok 45, I'll dig that one up. But Hickok 45 has a great video where he has a Schofield reproduction, and he has an axe handle, and he just taps the hammer and sends a round down range. So it doesn't take much to set off the primer, and that hammer is sitting right on it.
So Schofield revolvers, those were World War I?
No, those were Old West. That was essentially Colt's target for the Peacemaker. So they were top breaks, but they were single action.
I could have sworn there were Schofield revolvers used during World War I.
I mean, they probably were. I mean, we were definitely. I think I remember they were using Colt revolvers. I don't know if they were single action or not during the Philippines.
Okay.
They're really cool.
So Weer'd. Do you know what else is cool?
Our listeners. We've got to thank you, each and every one of you. We're really glad that you guys stuck around for this show. It would be a shame if we were just talking to empty microphones. But we got to give extra special thanks to our supporters on Patreon. To get a Patreon patron, go to patreon.com/Assorted Calibers podcast and sign up. You guys can get yourself a bonus content like early release of the podcast. We've got the ACB blooper reels. I've been told they're hilarious. We got the ACB film tracks. They are fun. And we have the ACB mag dump, which is, I don't know. It's the mag dump. It's an extra show. It has no rules.
No rules, just right.
That's right.
That was my terrible Australian accent. Crikey. Also, please remember to rate us on Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts. Subscribe to us on the platform of your choice, and share the show with your friends, both online and off.
You can get more from me at my blog, which is weirdworld.com. That's WEERD world.com. And hear me weekly on Handgun Radio on the Firearms Radio Network.
And you can get more from me at Linktree/Aaron Paulette. That's linktree.ee/Aaron Paulette, all one word.
And thanks to Nate Spencer for our music.
I'm the one who comes up with these snappy endings, and he doesn't. Our ability to freestyle is assorted, and so's our podcast. Good night, everyone.
No lies detected.